Hey, hey, hey. All right, go ahead and get out all your notes for Chapter 8 or for Unit 8. And man, it is a lot. When I was reading over all this, I was like, golly, that's a lot. Okay, well, let's go ahead and start with the characteristics of life. This list right here are things that in order to be alive, you have to have. You have to be able to do this. You have to be made of cells. So that's the first one. Have to be made of cells. Living things possess differing levels of complexity. So, for example, some things have a cell membrane, some things have ribosomes, some things have mitochondria, whatever. So, living things possess differing levels of complexity. Do me a favor and out beside B, write eukaryote versus prokaryote. And look back and see if you can remember the difference in those things. And if not, you can always Google them. Eukaryote is what you're looking up versus prokaryote. And summarize those right there beside B. Okay, living things use energy, that E stands for energy, for a metabolic process. That's the complexity, sorry. And then living things use energy. Beside E, write energy for me. Living things respond to an environment. So, and I always think about when you walk out in the sun, you squint. Living things respond to an environment. How about write that example down? Squint. All living things adapt to the environment. So depending, and I always think another one, trees grow towards the sun, so they may lean. So living things respond to an environment. Write that example down. Tree grows towards sun. All living things reproduce and can keep the lineage going. So in order to be alive and to stay alive, you got to be able to reproduce. So I put these cute baby polar bear. And then all organisms have to grow and develop. And so you can kind of see this boy from a baby all the way to an older man. Okay, and then the next thing we actually have gone over, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We have cells, the basic unit of life, and I had you look up earlier, prokaryotes are cells without organelles. And eukaryotes are cells with organelles. And so cells grow together and make up tissues, like a skin or an organ, like the tissues that make up an organ. And the tissues grow together and make up an organ. And then the organs all together make up an organ system. And then all the organ systems together make up the organism. A lot of organisms, we just finished this with ecology, make up a population. Populations, a bunch of different populations make up a community. Community plus non-living things, make sure you know abiotic factors. And that's your ecosystem. And then the biosphere, it says the entire planet or all of it. And so take a second, pause the video, and make sure that you're able to write these down tomorrow morning. All right, and this next part is really all review. And so Carolus Linnaeus, is the father of taxonomy. Here he is looking all curly-headed. And he's, at first there were just two kingdoms, animals and plants. But that's not the way it is. There's mushrooms, and they don't fit. So, he also came up with the binomial nomenclature, which capitalize the genus, lowercase the species. It's all italicized or underlined. And then which you already know. The domain is the biggest, which is underlined most inclusive. And then there's kingdom. Okay, beside the kingdom, circle 6 kingdoms, and that's what I'm going to expect you to know. Animals, Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, Protista, Archaea, and Eubacteria. Okay, and then phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And in order to be the same species, you must be able to produce fertile offspring. So write that in for me. Produce fertile offspring. So when you come in tomorrow, I'm going to ask you to write the hierarchies of life and then write the levels of classification. So make sure that you can do both of those things. Okay, so 8.2, this video is going to have both, and it won't be too long, don't worry, is about viruses. And so at the top, make sure you, underline or highlight viruses. And this picture I just think is neat because it shows you how small a virus is compared to a bacteria or even an animal cell. And so viruses are very small. So I wrote that at the top of my paper. Write that on yours too. This guy, Wendell Stanley, was the first person to actually isolate a virus, and it was a virus that infected tobacco plants. And so he looked at those, and from his studies and then some previously, we know that the viral structure has either DNA or RNA, not both. Like HIV has RNA. So write that in. HIV has RNA. The flu has DNA. And so depending on which virus it is, depends on whether it has DNA or RNA. The virus doesn't contain very much, maybe 400 to 500 genes. The virus capsid consists, that's the outside, consists of protein. So, this, like if you look at that pink circle or the outside, here's a good word. Here, look at that. So the capsid protects the DNA or RNA, and it helps it to attach. So the capsid has two functions, attachment and protection. It's built from proteins called capsomeres. And then some viruses actually have what's called a viral envelope. And I always think of a viral envelope like Harry Potter's invisible cloak. It makes them be invisible inside our bodies to our immune system. Our immune system doesn't recognize the viral envelope, and so it says this is a cloak. So it helps them to write in our immune system does not recognize the cloak. So kind of like Harry Potter. Okay, a bacteriophage, which would be this one here. Looks like a spider, kind of. That's specifically a virus that infects a bacteria. And then viruses aren't living because they can't reproduce. The only way a virus can reproduce is if the virus is inside your cells. And so the virus, you can see from this picture, has to get inside your cell, and then your cell reproduces, or the virus reproduces inside your cell. And so there's a picture of a bacteriophage putting its DNA inside your cell, and there's another picture of it reproducing. Okay, so the next thing it says, viruses must have a cell, and we call that, circle the word, obligate intracellular parasite. That means it's obligated to be inside your cells. Viruses need ribosomes. Why do they need ribosomes? Because ribosomes make proteins, and I wrote that in, but ribosomes make proteins. They have a specific range. Viruses are specific. The flu infects your respiratory system. Hepatitis infects your liver. The tobacco plant infects the tobacco plant. And so viruses are very specific on what their host is. And then a restriction enzyme, these enzymes are found in bacteria. And they're kind of like a protective agent. Let's see. Okay, so the restriction enzyme, and I was thinking there was one on this picture. Oh, there we go. The restriction enzyme is inside the bacteria, and that does not say restriction enzyme. Okay, restriction enzymes are inside the bacteria, and it helps them fight off the virus, kind of like a protection. So, found in bacteria, defense against viruses. Okay, a retrovirus, which is our next item, what that does is it does transcription, DNA to RNA, backwards. So retroviruses make DNA out of RNA. So they take the RNA and they turn it into DNA. So it's exactly backwards of RNA polymerase. It does it backwards. And this would be for a virus that has RNA in it, like AIDS. It would need to make DNA, and then our cells would respond to the DNA. So any virus that has RNA also has retroviruses. Some major viruses such as HIV, Ebola, influenza, that's the flu, and SARS, and we'll talk about those tomorrow in class. An epidemic is a big outbreak in one area, and then pandemic is where it's everywhere. Plant viruses, there's over 2,000 are known. Okay, viroid, these are naked infectious RNA molecules. They attack plants only. So viroids attack plants. They're infectious. Okay, and then prions, those are going to be proteins that are infectious, and that's what causes mad cow disease. And so I hope this was helpful.